Okay, so just a show of hands, who has used Tinder? Oh, like mostly everyone. All right, who's still on Tinder? Don't be shy. Don't be shy. We're going to get really deep and personal into my life in a second. So, I'm Molly Nye. I'm a senior UX designer at Paragrica, and this is my Tinder profile, which we're not going to spend too much time on because you'll realize I'm catfishing everyone in the room. But what I can tell you is that I am seriously unlucky at online dating, and I have racked up an impressive amount of horror stories in the last 5 years. In fact, come and see me later and I will tell you all about them. So 5 years of Tinder data. Here's where I realized that I had a lot of data to play with. And I was really intrigued to see what kind of insights I could pull from this. So I set up a spreadsheet. So 34 variables and 119 matches. Now, originally it was more like 405, but you try going through 405 matches one by one and collecting 34 variables of data, and you will quickly see that it's boring as hell. So I focused mainly on the interactions that I had with matches, so that was 119 of them. So I collected basic information such as name, age, job, any other notes, so did they super like me, for example. I looked at their profile, so the length of their bio in words, if they were looking for anything. A lot of people looking for a partner in crime. Whether they had their Spotify or Instagram connected. Photos, so how many photos they had. Looks, so eye color, hair color, and style, facial hair, any modifications. And also interactions. I looked at the length of the conversation. Yeah, I went deep, all right. Length of the conversation in messages. So who started it, who ended it, did we swap numbers, did we go on a date? And then I made some assumptions. So I made some assumptions about their likes and their interests, their personality and their style. And then I gave them a rating between 1 and 5, because that's not shallow, right? Of their attractiveness, their personality, and what kind of match we were. I also said, would I swipe right on them again, yes or no? And that's because after 5 years, some of them I wouldn't swipe right on again. So then I gave it to a professional data analyst because I know one, he's a friend of mine, and he jumped at the opportunity to help. So I was like, cool, take my data and run with it, and he did. And he built me 4 models. So here's the first. This is the master model. So basically, he concluded that if you look at my data, the number one factor for me swiping left or right was really down to style. So anyone with an alternative or individual sense of style was a real key factor in whether I swipe left or right. If you also paired that with them having a creative occupation, so that was anything in the creative industry or the music industry, it was a 91% match, which was ridiculous. However, if they didn't have a corporate or if they did have a corporate or an unknown occupation, then it really came down to their bio. So anything more than 10 words long was a 73% match, but anything less than 10 words long was only a 14% match. And of course, if they weren't alternative and they were just kind of average or they had like a professional style, it came down to attractiveness. So anything 3 out of 5 or lower was a 14% match, but anything which was 4 out of 5 or higher was an 80% match. So then he looked at the profile-specific model. So this is just assuming that I have no particular type. And it looks at the profile only and no other information. So again, he observed that there were particular insights into the profile and the bio specifically. So bios with more than 30 words was a 69% match. But bios with less than 30 words, it really came down to how many photos they had. So for some reason, 3 or less or 7 or more was only a 25% match. But if they hit the sweet spot between 4 and 6 photos, it was a 52% match, which, I don't know, maybe there's something to that, maybe too little photos and it's like, oh, what are you doing? Too many photos, it's like, okay, calm down. So we also had a look at the jobs by industry. Now you'll notice there's an alarming amount of musicians. I mean, what can I say? I like a musician. But there's also 40% from the creative industry, so there were a huge amount of designers. There was one UX designer, which was kind of cool. A lot of creative directors, producers, photographers. And then you have kind of the unknown, so jobs that I didn't know. Miscellaneous, there was a surprising amount of chefs. And then only 5% for anyone corporate. And then he sent me a message before he sent me through all of this data. Faz goes, question out of curiosity. What's more important to you? Is it personality or is it attractiveness? And I went, dude, it's personality. I am not shallow, okay? I am deep, man. And he went, are you sure? Don't lie to me. I know all of your secrets. And then he sent me this, and this is the attractiveness versus personality model. And he concluded that attractiveness was 4 times more important to me on Tinder than personality, which is brilliant. So yeah, anyone with a 4 out of 5 or higher was a 86% match. But I'd like to point out that personality was if they were a 4 out of 5 personality or higher, was a 67% match. Other than that, it would be a 19%. So personality does play into it. And so he also sent through the preference model. So on the subject of attractiveness, it turns out there was a high correlation between attractiveness and tattoos. So really, when I'm just looking through Tinder, I'm kind of just looking at tattoos going, yay, yay. But also, if they had blue eyes or not, there was a really strong preference for blue eyes, 73% over 36%. And so you can kind of build up here a kind of interesting picture. And this is when I'm looking around the room like, shit, is someone... and what you kind of end up with is a guy that looks either like a tattooed Jesus or like blue-eyed Dave Grohl. I like to think of it as blue-eyed Dave Grohl. So I'll let you be the judge of that. And so because I wanted to tie this back into UX, because otherwise why am I doing this? I made a persona. So this is John Doe. He is 31, which was my optimal age. And now it's 32 because I'm older, but this was done a year ago. So he's a musician. He plays guitar, obviously. His interests include music, specifically of the rock metal genre. He loves to travel. He loves alcohol. That came up. Food, and people would describe him as creative and witty and sociable and adventurous. And obviously his bio is 30 words long, and he has exactly 5 photos. And if you know this man, come see me afterwards because I'm very interested in meeting him. So these are the key insights that I've taken from this. So more words in a bio is better than less words. Goths with creative jobs, hit me up. I have an obvious weakness for musicians, but doesn't everyone? And also, there's a theory that I'm really just attracted to dudes that look like me with a beard. One of my colleagues pointed this out, and I've had an existential crisis since. So, thank you. You can read. I had a whole article which really goes into depth. It's like 13 minutes long, and it's on Medium, and you can find it at Molly India or all of that stuff. So, thank you. We're good?
We've had the questions.
Oh, questions?
Any questions from Molly?
No? Cool.
Yeah.
I'm not really using it as much though, mostly just to not be bored. Yeah.
I was going to ask, are you now using it to like observe and research?
No, yes, no, I don't know. There was a theory that so we could go through all the people I didn't have interactions with and then see how they would match when run through the same model. And that's interesting, but I also don't want to go through another 100 or so matches. That sounds boring as hell. It took months. It took forever. Yeah.
Being a UX designer, is there how would you improve Tinder?
Oh, okay. It's a loaded question. Do you know what? I've had thoughts about this. I had thoughts about making my own dating app and using a similar kind of algorithm where it kind of learns, no one steal this idea, where it kind of learns your taste or your type as you use it. That would be a cool idea. I think Tinder, you're looking at too much of a wide pool. So I think that's the key with Tinder. You're just constantly swiping through. But most of the time, at least for me, I'm swiping left. I'm like, no, no, no. Oh, tattoos, yes. Like, and it would be kind of cool. Like I know with OkCupid, you can kind of have a look at interests. You can see if they're creative or if they're kind of into design or into music. And you can kind of get a more feel for who they are as a person. But then again, I guess if you're looking at Tinder, it's supposed to be superficial. It's supposed to be instant. So maybe more detail, more, yeah.
Thank you for the presentation. That was really interesting. Regarding the question that you just had, or what you said about your own idea, do you think it would be a problem if you only search for people that the algorithm knows you like? Because at some point you get so narrow that
Yeah, probably.
it's not diverse enough anymore?
Yeah, I mean, and that's a genuine thing, because I mean, one thing I touched on in the article that I wrote is that, you know, like, I've had great relationships with people that did not have any of these attributes, and I've had really toxic relationships with people that, you know, were perfect by this. And I think when it comes down to it at the end of the day is that, like, yeah, these are great insights, but they're only really kind of indicative of what Tinder, that initial attraction you get on Tinder, or like looking at people in a bar or walking down the street. And they're not really for real life. I think that you can get like a much stronger connection with anyone, and it's not like I'm looking around the room going, oh, give me my long-haired musicians. Like, maybe that's an instant attraction, but you can form way, you know, deeper connections with other people. So, yeah.